Hello. So I got a message while I was walking to the bank and to Shoppers Drug Mart, and I wanted to share that message because, well, it's kind of my job. So I, the first song that came to my head was Wrecking Ball, but I didn't know it was called Wrecking Ball. I didn't know what song it was, but when the part that came to my head was. I didn't mean to start a war. I just wanted you to let me in. And instead of using force, I guess I should have let you in. Didn't mean to start a war. I just wanted you to let me in. I guess I should have let you in. Yeah. And I thought that song was "'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven for too long, for too long. Yeah, you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven for too long, for too long. So I thought it was Locked Out of Heaven by Bruno Mars, but it was Wrecking Ball. And now that I'm singing it again, well, the first time I sang it, I did get a very specific feeling, and then the more I thought about it, I got another feeling. So I'll tell you what I first felt. First time when I was listening to the lyrics that I was singing, I don't know why the song came to my head because I wasn't even singing a song that I was listening to. I was listening to a completely different song. We have The Chariot, The King of Wands, and Justice. Okay, well, anyways, so what I originally felt was, it felt like a song about survivors. I just saw 222. It felt like a song about survivors to me, especially the part, instead of using force, I guess I should have let you in. But it felt like, it felt like a song. It felt like a message, like a plea from someone who's violated somebody else's boundaries and somebody else's trust, somebody else's body. It felt like them trying to explain themselves. And it's interesting because I am a survivor. And my experience with sexual violence is not, what what we were raised, seeing and talking about when we spoke about sexual assault. I wasn't pinned down. It wasn't a stranger. It was my boyfriend. And it wasn't very clear cut that this was assault. It was confusing. And I put a lot of the blame on myself because I really didn't know what was happening. I was confused. And when I confronted him about it, it was still very confusing. I don't even know if he really understood what had happened. And so hearing that song, it's a bit triggering because it's like the reason why I've struggled with this journey so far as a survivor is because I don't feel like the person who assaulted me is an evil person, and I don't even really feel like they meant to assault me. And so, I don't want to send them to jail. I don't want to have this big thing about it. It's just a situation that sucked and was probably due to a lot of lack of education and lack of understanding, communication, and on my part, lack of boundaries and ability to, know when I'm uncomfortable. One second. Yeah, and on his part, lack of care, toxic masculinity, all these different things. So that song to me, that's what originally I felt. That's the vibe I originally got. I just saw 444. Is it felt like a plea from somebody who was the assaulter, being like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do this. I just wanted to be closer to you. I just wanted to understand you more. I just wanted to be connected to you more. And I did it in a way that was violent, but for me, I thought I was just breaking down your walls, not breaking you, not hurting you. So that's the first message I got. I don't really know where that leads because that might just be a personal message for me. Um, or maybe that connects to some of you if you have experience of assault and it's not so clear cut. And especially if your assaulter isn't somebody who you think is like an evil person. It's complicated, especially when you're in a relationship, because if your relationship wasn't on the whole abusive, then it's really hard trying to reconcile the fact that you experienced abuse, but you didn't always feel unsafe. You didn't always feel like you weren't being taken care of. You didn't always feel like you weren't. I wasn't in love in that relationship, but I had love for him. So, like, it wasn't always like I felt like I wasn't loved. But I did feel abandoned and abused in that circumstance or in that aspect of the relationship when it came to boundaries and what somebody has access to, and you know how much they care for and respect your own boundaries and your own right to not want to let somebody in. uh, and that's interesting because in this conversation that we're having around vulnerability right now in society, it's very like everybody be vulnerable, everybody share all your stuff, stop holding stuff in, share your emotions. And actually, there's a lot of pressure. I'm watching this show with my sister called Married at First Sight, and there's this couple on there, and a, the woman in the couple is really pressuring the guy to be more vulnerable. But what she really wants is for him to just tell her that he loves her when it's been 3 weeks, and just basically expose his whole soul to her, and it's been 3 weeks. But anyways, there's like this push to be vulnerable, and it's coming from a lot of people who feel like they are now mental health specialists because they go to therapy. And overall, it's almost like if you're not able to be vulnerable right now in society, you are seen as lesser than or less evolved. And I do think that a lot of men face this harshly and unfairly, because of gender stereotypes that women are more emotional and more emotionally intelligent, which is not always true. Maybe women have the space to express their emotions a bit more, so they're naturally given this title of being more emotionally vulnerable, but that's not really true at all. As somebody who has grown up around women and mostly had relationships with women, it's not that we're more emotionally intelligent. It's just more of an expectation that you have emotions as a woman compared to men. If men were raised with the same expectation to have emotions, then I think it would be pretty balanced, because gender has nothing to do with your emotional intelligence. It has more to do with what you're raised within, how comfortable and safe you feel expressing emotions and things like that. But like, women aren't more capable of expressing emotions than men. Men are just as capable. People are capable because gender isn't a thing. Anyways, to me. Anyways, yeah. So even that, and I was thinking. So the second message I got was that this was a song from the soul, and so it was kind of like a song from the soul speaking to the incarnating being. And I've been talking about recently this relationship between the incarnating being and the soul, and us being separate in many ways, and it being important to acknowledge that separation, because there are ways that our souls affect us and bring us trauma that is hard to really feel like we have a right to talk about it and be upset about it if it's not acknowledged that you are separate beings, separate entities. Sorry, my lip keeps getting caught on my braces. But yeah, so when I was thinking about it from a song from the soul, that part about I didn't mean to start a war, I just wanted you to let me in, but instead of using force, I guess I should have let you win, or I guess I should have let you in. Um, that felt like a message about the awakening process, because awakening is not, it's like very hard and it's very traumatic. And I was saying, if you don't have a basis of spirituality already, going through an awakening can be extremely traumatizing. It can bring you trauma that, you know, creates trauma for the next lifetime, because it's a lot. It's just like, what the fuck is happening? And all of that is decided by your soul, whether you're going to have a basis of spirituality and an understanding that there is more beyond this 3D world. So you don't get to choose whether you have that understanding or not. That's dependent on what your soul chooses for you in this lifetime, and then the family that you're raised within, and what you have access to, what information you have access to. Because we're now in the digital age, it's a little bit easier on incarnating beings, because you have Google, you have other people that you can talk to. It's not just your family base. But still, for most of us who are adults now, we weren't raised heavily on the internet. At least I wasn't. Like, in my childhood, there was YouTube, but that was the main thing I remember, and I wasn't using it very often. I didn't start really being online until like middle school, and I feel like your younger years are where you really get to have that setting. I have a foundation of spirituality. I've always been spiritual. So awakening for me was traumatic, but not as much of a like a whiplash feeling as it could have been. But I think that oftentimes it's really, really harsh, and it kind of happens like there's no way to stop an awakening. Once it's happening, it's happening. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can fight against it, but that's not going to stop it from happening. It's going to continue to happen. And either it's going to be traumatic and you're going to be like, or it's going to be like a flow. But even in that flow, it's like a river. So even though rivers flow and they're going with the pace, it's not calm. It's not always calm. It's not like a gentle stream. Sometimes it's like a rapid rushing river, you know, and it's ridiculous and it's crazy, but you're going with the flow. You're just not fighting against it, but it doesn't mean that it's still not chaotic and difficult and painful. And I feel like that message was like almost like the soul apologizing and being like, I'm sorry for the way that awakenings happen, and the way that you are reminded that there is more beyond yourself and more beyond this world. And I'm sorry that that you're not being taken care of in that process. To me, I feel like incarnating beings are given the short end of the stick when it comes to remembering all that there is beyond, beyond us and beyond the planet, and remembering the universe and remembering ancestors and your soul, your spirit, God, whatever you believe in. And remembering all that, it's hard, and there's a lot of pressure. And once you do begin that process of remembering, if you fight against it, or if you're resentful, or if you're struggling to adapt quickly, there is like judgment. There's a lot of judgment, and there's a lot of shame around it coming from other people, because we're all interacting with each other, right? Coming from other people, and maybe their souls, or maybe just people, other incarnating beings, but I think that even they're operating out of a place of trauma, because they're like, well, I adapted. And it's like, well, girl, like, that's you. But for me, I'm not going to pretend that this isn't very hard. This is very hard. This is very confusing and difficult and scary. And what the hell is happening? It's just a lot. And what I thought was funny is I was continuing to sing the Locked Out of Heaven song. I kept singing it and singing it. And I didn't remember that song was about sex. I mean, I guess it's obvious once you listen again. But that was interesting to me, because then it connected again to what I was saying in the beginning, the first message that I got around the Wrecking Ball song, which I felt like was about being a survivor and also about the abuser. I thought it was kind of both to me. I felt like, I don't know Miley Cyrus's experiences, but to me, if she is a survivor, I could understand uh, how she was expressing that in that song, and I connected to it. But I could also see if she was trying to express the other person's perspective, I also could feel that. So I thought she did a really great job with that song, or whoever wrote that song, if it wasn't her, did a really great job of expressing the complicatedness of survivorhood and that whole dynamic between the survivor and the abuser. Um, and recognizing that they're a person beyond being an abuser, and people make mistakes, and sometimes the mistakes that people make are horrible, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't a mistake, and it doesn't mean that they're still not a person. It's very, very hard because as a survivor, especially when you're in a it's a relationship, and so there's that romantic aspect, and just recognizing that you know this person, so there's that intimate partner, I think violence is what it's called. um, but when it's that, it's very hard because you can't help but humanize this person. You know them. You know them beyond the violence that they've brought upon you. And so just kind of, you know, painting them as just this abuser is very hard. It's very hard to just call them that. Like I wrote a letter to the guy, my ex, basically as I was trying to heal and just get it out and figure out what was happening last year. And I called him a rapist, and it was very hard for me to do that. It was very empowering because I needed to be able to say that and not care about how he felt. But it was very hard, and I still struggle, even though I was able to say that in this letter. I don't say that very often, and I don't really refer to him as like my abuser or my rapist because I don't see him that way, because I saw him and I knew him as a person and as a kind person and as somebody who cared for me and someone who I was willing to be in a relationship with, so I cared for. So, trying to sorry, hold on. It's just like way too loud. Close, close, close. Okay, anyways, yeah, so trying to just make him that didn't work for me. But yeah, both of those songs, I could see it, how they are about sex in different ways, and not about sex in a way that is very superficial, but in a very deep and meaningful way. For me, with Wrecking Ball, I told you the connection to sex, and then for oh, and they even connect in that way because for Locked Out of Heaven, you know, when you're having sex that is meaningful and that feels good and that is uh, kind of like an out of body experience, like it goes beyond the physical, it becomes spiritual and it is like an awakening, and it can introduce you to parts of existence that you didn't realize was possible because you're moving out of a space of just physically interacting and you're connecting with somebody else, uh, like metaphysically. And all of that is really powerful. Um, and that can also lead people to behave in ways that are out of character or lead people into different mindsets and different actions because you're now experiencing the universe rather than just experiencing your 3D incarnating life. I think that having access to really powerful sexual experiences helps you have access to source because you're understanding a part of that of creation. Um, and it's interesting that it's called Locked Out of Heaven, and you think about the way that sex is often demonized in religion when it's outside of marriage and when it's for pleasure, things like that. Not in all religions, but just sometimes. At least I was raised religious, and I just remember in Catholic school, it wasn't like a great thing to have sex. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing you should be doing to have sex outside of marriage and things like that. So it's funny that it's called Locked Out of Heaven, even though I'm guessing he's not talking about having sex with his wife in that song. But I mean, he could have been. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going. I guess I just want to share all that. There's Corden. Oof. Yeah. Anyways, that was just a message I got. Anyways, I cut off my hair. So that's a change that's happened. I'm traveling right now, so I'm in a hotel. But I just wanted to share that with you guys. I'm gonna go now because I want to go and see if I can get an oracle deck, because I only brought this with me and this is all I have for 2 months, and I just want a new oracle deck. So I might go and see if I can go find one before I have to check out and catch my bus. I'm gonna be on the bus for 5 hours, so I need to go do some stuff before then. But anyways, I'm gonna head out. Yeah, bye.